welcome to another episode of the After Work Anime Club podcast. I am your host, Luulu Soul, and joining me today is...
I'm Yami Brooke. Yes.
You are Yami Brooke. So we have a unique episode this time around. We're going back to our older format of where we're actually watching one anime instead of reviewing multiple, so that's exciting.
Woo!
And the anime that we're doing today is called Ameku M.D. Dr. Detective. The reason it's such a, what I feel like as a special episode is because, Yami, you have experience working in the ER, am I correct?
I do.
If you don't mind sharing, what was your job when you were in the ER, when you worked there?
I was an emergency room tech. So what that encompassed for me in the emergency room that I worked in, was basic CNA duties like getting vitals and help changing and repositioning patients, in addition to, assisting in triage, getting EKGs, splinting broken bones and sprains and whatnot. Transport, because I worked at night. If we got a code blue, which is a patient in cardiac arrest, I was the one who was setting up the room, getting everything in there, getting the patient on the monitor. We did the bulk of the chest compressions, while the nurses did the IVs and the medications and all that other stuff. I did basically, if it didn't involve giving medications or doing actual diagnoses or anything like that, I was probably doing it. I also would do secretary work as well, which included getting patients admitted, paging doctors, answering the EMS radio, and just answering phone calls in general. There was a lot.
Yes.
There was a lot.
Sounds like you had quite the overall experience, so you did a little bit of everything.
I really did, and I was there for 6.5 years. So, yeah, it was a large chunk of my life.
Wow, so I knew you had experience in the ER, but this is the first time I've known like the full extent of that. That is wild.
Yep. Yep.
And now, I don't know how much of this anime is going to spend time in the ER, but episode 1 definitely spent a good chunk in that space. For anyone who does not know, Ameku M.D. Dr. Detective, it's basically House, the anime.
Yes.
Including, I believe there is a House reference in like the first 5 minutes because they try to diagnose a patient as having lupus.
It's never lupus.
They certainly suggest lupus, yes.
Is this something that actually happens in the ER? Do people just go, hey, could this be lupus? Or,
no.
No?
I don't think I've ever heard the word lupus in the ER in my entire time there. Also, this guy like gets hung up on diagnosing the patient, and that doesn't necessarily happen in the ER. In fact, it like the whole thing about going to the ER and everything that they do there, it's not necessarily to solve what's going on, especially if it's something that's been going on for a while. You get run the gamut when you're there, so that they can rule out all the scary things. Okay, has your appendix burst? No. This? No. Okay, we've ruled out everything that could be killing you right now. If you're stable and need to see a specialist, you go home. If you're not stable and need to see a specialist or have more further diagnostics done, then you get admitted to the hospital.
So in the case of the two patients we have in episode 1, we have a little boy who is complaining of stomach pains and body aches, and then we have an older gentleman, also complaining of stomach pains and body aches. Would they have been sent home, or would they have been sent to admission to the hospital?
It depends on their condition. Like, if they're not stable enough to be sent home to follow up with a primary or something, then they could have been admitted to the hospital. If the hospital is not a pediatric hospital for the kid, then he might have been transferred to a hospital that admits pediatrics. Like our ER would see pediatrics, but we couldn't admit them. If they were stable and whatnot, then yeah, they would be told to follow up with a stomach doctor or some other specialist.
Now, you keep mentioning like
yeah.
if they are stable. Obviously, we don't have a whole lot of information from the
Got
episode,
you.
but would you, from what information we have in the episode, what do you think? Or were they stable, or would they have needed admittance?
I didn't see their like actual, I don't remember seeing their actual vital signs. So I don't know what their blood pressure was. I don't know what their heart rate was, stuff like that. If their vital signs were fine, then yeah, they might have been sent home. If their vital signs were not fine, if their blood pressure was low or this or that, and there was something that they could do while doing further diagnostics, like, all right, let's at least admit you for observation, give you some fluids, give you some anti-nausea medication, and we'll order some more tests and whatnot, then yeah, that's stuff that they might be admitted to have done.
Okay.
And then again, if they don't find anything then, and if they're relatively okay to go home, like they're able to walk without fainting, their blood pressure's fine, their oxygen's fine, like all this stuff is fine, there's no reason to keep them in the hospital, then yeah, like they don't like keeping people in the hospital. One, it's expensive. That's a lot of resources. But also, there's a lot of germs in the hospital. The more time you spend in a hospital, the more likely you are to get something from the hospital.
Oh.
So whatever you can get done outside of the hospital is really better for you, as long as you're stable.
Now, backing up a little bit towards diagnostics, we have in this episode, we have who is presumably the main character, the doctor herself. She is from a completely different department. She is from, let's see, what is it? The diagnostic pathology department. According to the summary, it's she handles cases other physicians deem too difficult to treat. So she is not a part of the ER. She has loaned one of her subordinates to the ER. Can a doctor from another department just come into the ER or a department that doesn't belong to them in general and just start throwing a diagnosis around?
I'm going to preface this with I worked in an American hospital in a not small town. So like my hospital wasn't one of the biggest hospitals in the region, but it was a good-sized hospital that served several smaller towns in addition to the city that I lived in. That never would have happened in our hospital. We had hospitalists, which were doctors that worked in the hospital. They were the ones that the patients got admitted to. And then we had our ER doctors. Even as a tech, before I started working in the emergency room, I was a float tech. So I floated all over that hospital. I worked in literally every department for about 2.5 years before moving to the ER. You don't float to the ER to work in the ER. You float to the ER to sit with psychiatric patients, because ER staff are so, I don't want to say specialized, because they're specifically not specialized. ER is everything. There is no specialty in the ER. But yeah, they did not float other staff to the ER ever. Except when we were holding patients for ICU, because we didn't have any ICU beds to send them to. In those instances, if we were holding them long enough, like I'm talking about multiple ICU patients in the ER for 3 days, in those instances, they would send a nurse from upstairs to take care of those patients in the ER. After all the ER stuff has already been done, they're literally just waiting for a bed. So yeah, no, in the hospital that I worked at, no, that absolutely never would have happened. In a smaller hospital, I've heard different things from people who have worked in smaller, more rural hospitals where staff members had to wear a lot more hats, so to speak. And in situations like that, I could see potentially where that might happen. I don't know how big this hospital is. And also it's in Japan.
Okay. And the last question I wanted to ask you, as someone who has worked in an ER for 6 years in the past, there was a part of this episode that I feel like almost triggered you pretty strongly. And that is when they called the guy's cell phone because of what Code Red, I think it was?
Code Red would be fire. Code Blue.
Code Blue.
Code Blue is cardiac arrest, yes. Specifically, it was the ambulance calling his cell phone. That was just like, that never would happen. No. Ambulances, EMS, they radio the hospital that they're going to. They'll be like medic 404 to hospital 375 or whatever. And then that hospital would answer back, and then they would give their report. And then after taking that brief report, then everybody jumps into action. We might call the doctor's cell phone number, not cell phone number. Our doctors would carry, I mean, it was a cell phone, but it was a hospital cell phone. And so we might call them if they're not right there, if they're in a room with a patient or something, or page them overhead. The rest of the staff would get the room ready, get the AED, the crash cart, all of that stuff ready. Because you usually only have like 3 to 8 minutes from that call to them coming through the door.
I think it's pretty safe to say that at least within the first chunk of episode 1, we're not watching this anime for an accurate depiction of an ER or maybe even a hospital.
Neither would you watch House for that. Even though House is one of the most accurate depictions of hospitals in general, it's still not accurate. So no, there will be nitpickings. There will be like, that would never happen. And then other things where it's like, that might happen in these kinds of hospitals.
And we do have like a main character here who not only lives on top of the hospital, but lives in an adorable fairy tale cottage on top of the hospital.
It's so cute. It's so cute. I can guarantee any hospital with a cath lab, with a cardiac cath lab, would love it if their cardiac cath doctor or entire team just lived on top of the hospital. Jesus, man. Also, that spot should probably go to a helipad, but she just decided to have a whole cottage on it instead. But dang, it's cute.
And now later on, going a little bit away from like expertise and stuff, and going back into we're watching an anime because we're nerds.
Yeah. This lady's a nerd.
Oh my gosh, I love her so much. So we have a main character who looks like your stereotypical, like, I'm a genius, but I look like I'm 12 years old character.
Right. Yeah. She's short.
She is very short, but I love how, at least as far as the English dub goes, she sounds like an adult still.
Yeah.
And she talks like maybe an immature adult, but still an adult.
What do you mean you need to go take care of a patient? We need to watch Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park is important.
Man, now, get your priorities straight.
And I mean, I know I felt it. I don't know if you felt this or not, Yami, but the feeling of friend has not seen, read, or consumed important thing to me, must introduced friend to thing.
Yes.
So when she's like, he has not seen Jurassic Park, he must see Jurassic Park, I'm like, yes, I feel you.
That's a travesty.
I don't understand why it's training, but I do feel you. I'm guessing from your comments of like, you've watched House, I'm assuming you've watched other hospital dramas, other detective-y shows. Do you think, spoiler alert, but do you think a dinosaur bit that guy's leg off?
I don't think a dinosaur bit his leg off. If anything, like, she's talking about okay, maybe the thing fell somehow and chomped his leg off, but how? That doesn't make sense either. And then it doesn't explain the blue blood and this and that. I'm trying to figure out how she's gonna bring this back around. Yeah, maybe some other kind of lizard, but I don't think they have gators there. And a gator wouldn't like straight up chomp through a leg. A gator would chomp the leg and then go into a death roll, and it would basically get twisted off, and it's excruciating and awful. And hi, I'm from Florida.
And that also wouldn't explain the blue blood.
No, it still wouldn't explain the blue blood.
I also did not think it was actually a dinosaur. I don't think we're gonna go into, supernatural time travel. Oh my gosh, we cloned dinosaurs.
No.
But
I do think it's gonna come out of left field.
Yeah.
For it like, man, I'm excited for it. I'm
curious to see what's gonna happen, because normally it's stuff like this. It's like the detective makes an outrageous claim, and everyone's like, "There's no way that could happen," and then the whole point is the detective then is like, "This is why," and it's like, oh,
yeah, like some kind of redirective thing. Like, okay, no. A dinosaur didn't actually bite his leg off, but whatever, and that's how you can say that the dinosaur bit his leg off.
Going off of what we have learned from past ER stuff and your experiences, I'm willing to bet that even if she does give a medical reasoning for all of this, the medical reasoning might not actually be accurate.
Yeah, we'll see.
We will see. In fact, we're going to go right now and we're going to watch episode 2. And I'm hoping today, Yami, that we get through at least the mystery of, is it a dinosaur?
Right.
But so we're going to pause the podcast, go watch episode 2, and then we'll be back.
Oh, I do have one more thing.
Okay. What?
Just because I want to talk about it real quick.
Okay.
So I don't know why this guy's blood is blue. I have no idea. But you know what does have blue/purple blood is the octopus and horseshoe crab and I don't know about all spiders, some spiders as well. Do you want to know why?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so what causes our blood to be red? Our red blood cells. And do you know why they're red?
See, I'd always thought that blood was blue until it was hit with oxygen, and then the oxygen turned it red.
You'd be surprised how many people think that.
I'm one of them.
Actually, no, you're good. I've heard people tell me that their science or biology teachers in high school tried to tell them the same thing, and it's like,
so that is incorrect. Factually incorrect.
Is incorrect.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll tell you why. So your blood, the liquid part of your blood, is actually yellow. It's pale yellow.
Oh, that's gross.
Yeah, the plasma. The plasma is literally the liquid part of your blood. What gives it its red color is the red blood cells, and they carry your oxygen. And what carries the oxygen in your red blood cells is the iron. And that's why it's red when it's oxygenated, is because the iron, it turns bright red. And it's called hemoglobin. In the octopus and horseshoe crab and spiders, they instead have hemocyanin, and instead of iron, it binds with a copper, which is blue when it's oxygenated.
So I wonder if they're going to try to do something along the line of like, the guy just had a severe iron deficiency.
I still don't see how that would turn it blue, because it wouldn't. So I am still stumped on why this guy's blood is blue. Also, the reason people think that their blood is blue until it's oxygenated is because of the veins. Your blood is always red. It is a darker red when it's not well oxygenated, and a brighter red when it is. And your veins that are carrying your blood, your veins aren't blue, but the red through your skin and color and whatnot, it ends up appearing blue. Yeah, so there you go.
All right, well now we are going to go and watch episode 2 and find out if this guy has horseshoe crab ancestors.
Yeah.
All right, we have now watched episode 2 of the anime, and well, there was no ER involvement in episode 2. However, we did get the conclusion of our mystery.
Indeed.
I will say, like, for my part, honestly, so episode 1 was really strong. Comparatively, episode 2, I feel, was fairly weak. We figured out that, yes, it was the T-Rex. We're not going to go into how, but yes, it was the T-Rex really early on in the episode. And so the rest of the episode just felt like explanations.
I mean, we got confirmation that the T-Rex was the tool, which, I mean, I kind of already figured that. I did predict that, but the how was where I was getting stumped. And then we got very much into the typical Sherlock Holmes, and this is how I got there, and this is how I'm gonna trick you into confessing, and this is how, like,
Ah ha ha, the cleverness of me.
yes, it's very Sherlock Holmes. Which I'm not complaining because that's right up my alley. I like that kind of dumb stuff.
And it's not up my alley. That's not normally where I gravitate.
I get you.
However, I will say the ending of episode 2 with how she reacted, the main character reacted to the loud noise, that has me interested. And how her assistant reacted to the loud noise. I would like to see more of that. So
I like her sister.
I like her sister too. So the ending, I feel like episode 2 ended strong. Episode 1 started strong. Episode 2 ended strong. And we do have a 3-episode
rule.
Yeah, the 3-episode rule. Make it or break it. Does it pass the vibe check? I think this is definitely one of those anime that you need the 3rd episode, because as of episode 2, I'm kind of on the fence. Like, if it weren't for the 3-episode rule, I probably wouldn't want to continue it. What about you?
As opposed to me, where literally everything about this, it tickles my everything.
It tickles your everything?
It does. It does. It's everything that I like.
So yeah, we've watched episode 2. We're gonna go into episode 3. So far, episodes 1 and 2, Yami, have passed the guide check, have passed the vibe check for you.
Oh yes.
And for me, I'm neutral. Like, normally, the dub will make or break a neutral anime for me. Like, if there is a dub, I will go for the I will go from neutral to positive, because I can watch it while doing other things. Episode 2 felt like nothing but information overload.
Sherlock Holmes stuff loves to do that.
Yes. And it's the same issue I finally figured out I have with Reincarnated as a Slime. There's so much world building and political stuff in that show that it feels like constant information overload. But we finished the little mini mystery of the dinosaur, which means episode 3 will theoretically start a new mystery. We're gonna watch episode 3, and then we're gonna come back and talk about it, and that will wrap up this portion of the Afterwork Anime Club podcast. This portion of the video has a few trigger warnings, such as suicidality, the Momo challenge, and the Slenderman court case. While in-depth conversation is not gone over, if these topics bother you, you may want to skip this portion of the video. All right, and now we've watched episode 3 of this anime, the name of which I keep forgetting to learn how to pronounce. What was it? It's okay.
House the Anime.
House the Anime. We're going to call it House the Anime.
Yeah.
And like a few minutes ago, you guys heard me talk about how episode 2 kind of lost me. Episode 3 brought me right on back. But episode 3 has stuff that I'm much more interested in. We were talking about psychosis and cursed videos, and it actually reminded me of something that I started going down a rabbit hole a while back. Do you remember hearing about the Momo videos?
Yes.
So for anyone who didn't know, Momo was how do I explain it? It was a sculpture by a Japanese artist, and it was very grotesque in nature, but that's all it was. It was just a sculpture. And then somebody had the great idea to take a picture of this sculpture and start splitting it subliminally into children's YouTube videos. And from that spawned an urban legend. And this is the same urban legend that pops up consistently every few years or so. And the whole thing of the urban legend is it sends subliminal messages to children, gives them tasks to complete, and the end result supposedly results in suicide. In Momo's case, apparently some of the subliminal messages were stuff like, if you tell your parents about this, Momo's going to come and get you, kind of things. What did you learn about Momo? Did you hear similar things?
I actually wasn't that deeply aware of Momo. Like, I was aware that there were some weird videos, but I wasn't on that side of YouTube, and my kid wasn't old enough for YouTube at least not as far as I was concerned. So like it wasn't something that I was concerned about enough to actually learn anything about. So that's more than I knew about it. It sounds similar though to what was going on with the Slenderman girls.
Yep,
The teenage girls that tried to murder their friend.
Another rendition of it was what is it called? It was the White Whale or the Blue Whale game.
Huh.
Yes, so the Blue Whale Challenge back in 2016 that is claimed to have existed in several countries. And now to be clear, anytime I have looked up this phenomenon of insert thing here sending subliminal messages or messages to children or preteens, it usually ends up being something that has been debunked. It definitely lives in the urban legend era.
Right. In the very real case that was the Slenderman girls, I mean, one had diagnosed after the fact schizophrenia, and the other one had, I don't remember what it was called, but it basically makes her very easily impressionable. That's not the word, but she very easily believes things. So the one who was having schizophrenia was convincing the other one of these things, and it was a bad feedback loop.
So that, I do remember hearing that case, but that is different from what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, like, for example, the Blue Whale game, I believe, was supposedly a phone number that you could call and it would text you. And I think Momo also had, like, a number that you could, quote, call and talk to Momo. But so when we have in this episode 1, they're like, oh yeah, there's this cursed video that's causing kids to commit suicide. That's where my mind went. It went straight to the Momo phenomenon, the Blue Whale phenomenon. So that's where, like, and this is one of the really cool things I like about the fact that you have a medical background, and I am slowly building up a psychology background because you went straight medical.
I did, and I called it.
You did call it. You, like, first, like, this, the first thing hits, and you're like, this is what I think it is, and you started going over, like, the diagnosis criteria. That was really cool.
Like, look, guys, I'm not a genius detective. I'm not. But I'm also not a slouch. I mean, I think I'm a fairly smart person, and when it happens to be something that's in my special interest, yeah,
you had it, like, right there, and I really like that was really cool that you were also correct. I did really enjoy, like, it how I saw this cell phone, this video that in the episode, and I went straight to the Momo thing, the White Whale game. You went straight medically, and considering this is a detective show, I'm kind of happy that it went more into the medical diagnosis route. But I also would be really curious now to see an episode similar that approached, I don't know, I don't think this is the type of anime that can really approach the darker elements of the internet, though, so it would have to be a different anime to dive into that.
Sure. And so, like, I could feel the bait and switch. Also, like, part of it is my knowledge of medical stuff. Part of it is I'm familiar with the formula of House and Sherlock Holmes and the bait and switch.
Yep.
As soon as she started to mumble about the subliminal messages, I already knew that definitely wasn't going to be it.
The sheer fact that it was like, oh, this is a supernatural thing. Ma'am, this is a medical show. We're not going into this. Is not Dan.
Oh,
we're gonna.
Of course, we weren't gonna go supernatural.
Yeah.
But I also, like, that also tipped me in the direction of, okay, we're not gonna go psychological. We're gonna go neurological.
Right.
All right. I'm doubling down on epilepsy. Like, epilepsy was my first guess. But also, going by the formula of House and Sherlock Holmes, the minute she started to go into the subliminal thing and then blah blah blahs, I was like, okay, we're not going that way. We're not going psychological. We're going medical, which means it's definitely epilepsy.
And that taught me a lot because I would not have ever guessed epilepsy because I know very little about epilepsy. Most of what I know is flashing lights equals seizure. And most of what I know about seizure is losing control.
Grand mal seizures.
Yeah. Losing control of body.
You know what that reminds me of?
What?
When I went into labor, I didn't realize I was going into labor because all I knew about going into labor was gush of water and it's coming. And that's not how it happened for me.
Oh my gosh, I would love to do an episode where we just talk about our labor stories.
Oh my god, yes.
Because Because I feel like everybody has a very unique one.
Yeah. And like and same for when I went 4 years undiagnosed after my asthma triggered, because I didn't realize that's what was happening was asthma, because all I knew about asthma was, oh, you can't breathe at all and you're going to go to the hospital. And that's not what was happening to me. I was just struggling to breathe at different points, and then it would go away eventually. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm not dead, so I guess I'm okay.
You know, it's fascinating just how often a diagnosis is like, oh, this is normal for me, but it is abnormal for everybody else.
And even for you, it's not normal because you could have been treating it this entire time.
For my case, it was
yeah, it depends on what it is.
so like we talked about this a little bit earlier. My whole I thought it was a phobia of fear when it was anxiety attack, or an anxiety episode. I don't know if an attack is really the appropriate way to phrase it, but an anxiety episode. Another one was I used to get what would be most particularly called the zoomies, which is where I would put on insert music here that just felt right, and I would bounce, run, dance back and forth through my house to the beat of the music. It wasn't really dancing, it wasn't really running, it wasn't really bouncing, but it was some combination of all three. And I was the only person I had ever met that had ever done this. Drove my family crazy. Turns out it is in fact a symptom of ADHD, and it is part of the hyperactivity portion of hyperactive.
Would you say that was stimming?
Yes, it is absolutely a stem.
Okay.
And fun fact I have noticed, because I have recently started decreasing to 0 my citalopram, which is my anxiety medication, and the desire to do that particular stem has come back.
Okay.
And that's one of the happier portions of that, because it's something that I used to really enjoy. And I had stopped doing it in my older age, but now that I'm having, because the anxiety medication that I'm taking helps mute my emotions a little bit, which also brings up more lethargy, and so muted the need or the desire to have the zoomies. And so I'm very happy to have my zoomies back. For lack of a better term.
No, I completely understand.
Yeah.
I think the dance between psychology and neurology that some of these things do between mental health and neurological things is fascinating.
Well, yeah, psychology was originally, like, when Freud was developing what we know of today as modern day psychology, it was as a part of neurology. He was a brain scientist. He probably would not like very much where psychology has gone at this point.
I find that interesting that these were all that research into all of this started with the neurologist. And then at some point, so much of it got lumped into psychology and mental illness, which it's not, some of it.
But that being said, I do think we are coming on to the end of this episode, because we've talked a fair amount of it about our House the Anime. Do you think you are going to keep watching it? Because we've watched all of the dubbed episodes. It'll continue to get dubbed, but we've watched all the dubbed episodes that are currently out.
I'll probably wait for more dub, just because it's easier for me to watch, and I do like this dub. I like the voices that they're using for these characters, so I'll probably wait for the dub and I'll continue it.
As for me, I think the same thing. With this episode 3, it has convinced me to at least give it some more episodes to see what goes on. It'll really depend. Honestly, the make or break it for me might be episode 4, because that will let me know if there is an underlying plot between all of this, or if this is a week by week monster of the month kind of a thing where each episode can more or less stand on its own, which I tend to like a little bit less than the more story-driven shows.
The feeling I'm getting, if it is going the way of House, is it's going to be very much Monster of the Week. But then you have the relationship with her sister, the relationship with her subordinate, like those relationships that can continue and evolve over time, the relationship between her and other staff in the hospital, that kind of stuff. So that's what I think we'll see progress, but that it's still going to be monster of the week, because that's just the nature of these kinds of shows, of these Sherlock Holmes things, is there's a new mystery, but then yeah.
And I think
So
you're very,
how
very
much you
likely
get
correct.
invested with those side characters and their relationships with her, that's up to you. I'm gonna be here for it, absolutely, for those special cases. And then it'll be interesting to see, you know, how her relationship with everyone else grows, because I would like to see her develop just a little bit more respect for people. I don't think it's gonna happen.
She is very
I
much
don't-
Peter Pan, all the cleverness of me.
Yes. These kinds of people, they're very narcissistic, very I am the center of the universe. And look at me, look how clever I am. And I don't see her changing much.
If they
But
do,
she's a lot of fun for me to watch.
oh, if they do, because one thing I don't know if they're going to. Again, this will be all. Is this an underlying story? Is she going to have character growth? But one of my favorite plot lines with stuff like this is when you have this genius character and at some point she's going to be wrong.
I remember the episode in House when that happens, and oh man, oh god. If you don't mind just a few more minutes, you can cut this out if you want to. But I would love to talk about it.
Go ahead, let's talk about it.
Okay, because like I was reminded of it when she said that she was banned from the psych ward, and I was just thinking about when House was in a psych ward. And he meets a character there, and House likes to fix everything. He likes to see a problem and he likes to fix it. There's some things you can't fix, sir. And he indulges this character who believes that he's a superhero and that he can fly
Oh no.
and all this other stuff. And he breaks them out and takes them for a joyride and blah 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 blahs. And then they're coming back and he's like, okay, time for us to go back in. And then he looks over and the guy is on top of the building and he's ready to fly and he jumps.
Oh no.
And he does not die, but he does get very badly injured. And House has to deal with the guilt and the realization that I can't fix everything. And sometimes me doing these things can really hurt someone. I don't see them doing that with this character, but it would be really interesting if they do.
And I don't know if it's going to be quite that level.
Right.
But I can definitely see there being a specific episode where she has this big diagnosis and she's doing the whole thing where she, you know, I have figured it all out. And then it gets to it's like, she was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just see, like, if it happens, like, it would probably be like the end of one episode going into another one. And it's just shocked face. And she's going, what do you mean I'm wrong?
Right?
And that would be a very interesting downward spiral to see her go into.
Mm-hmm. Especially depending on what happens with her being.
Yes, like whether or not her
like,
being wrong has any consequences, like in the example you gave with House.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like consequences are a very big thing with these types of characters. If they don't have any, if there's no reason for them to not behave the way the way they behave, then they're just gonna keep doing it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm very interested.
Well, that has been this latest episode of the Afterwork Anime Club podcast. We are going to be on our way now. Keep watching anime, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.